I didn't know a lot about investing. I accidentally read a book about Warren Buffett when I was about 30 years old and the light bulb went off. So, at 19, you have a huge head start. I didn't know what investing or stocks or compounding or anything else was till I was 30. So 1994 was when I first started to invest. For all of us in different fields or different interests that we are going to sometimes have an aha moment. And the important thing when you have that aha moment is to seize the moment and to go all in. So one of the things that I realized when I was reading Warren Buffett, one of his biographies of Warren Buffett when I was 30, and the big aha moment that hit me was that Buffett has a quote. He says, "I'm a better investor because I'm a businessman. And I'm a better businessman because I'm an investor." There's an interplay between running a business and being a good investor. And what I realized when I was looking at the way he was doing different investments is that I had been an entrepreneur since my mid 20s, 24, 25. And I was spending maybe 3 or 4% of my time figuring out the strategy and direction of the business I had. And then about 95, 96% of the time on the blocking and tackling to actually execute on that strategy. So most of the time went on, you know, executing on it. What I realized when I read about Buffett is that he was using the same part of the brain I was using to figure out my strategy for my business, to figure out his investments. And except that it was 80% of his time and not 3 or 4% like I was. So because he was not running something, he had a lot of time available to invest. And I always found the 4% time on strategy to be a lot more interesting than the 96% herding cats and making things happen. I mean, it was fun, but the 4% was the most fun, figuring out what's going to be a strategy, what's going to be a direction, all of that. And I realized that if I spent more time as an investor, that 4% time would increase. And I was very interested in that. So in 94, when I was 30, I had about $1 million. I just sold a portion of my company, and after tax, I had 1 million. So I said, okay, I'm going to start studying these public companies, and I'm going to try to figure out which ones are likely to do well in the future. And that whole notion of trying to figure out what these companies are all about and how they're likely to do in the future was very similar to trying to figure it out for my own company. Like I said, it's using the same part of the brain. And that's why Buffett said, I'm a better businessman because I'm an investor and so on. So when I started to invest, I found my life is a lot happier and more exciting because now that 4% time was increasing, I was spending about maybe 10, 15, 20 hours a week doing investment research. And that was really exciting for me. And I got to the point about 5 years later when I pretty much lost interest in the company I was running. So the million that I had at that time in 94 had done really well. I had compounded at more than like 70% a year. It was sitting at about 13 or 14 million. It had done extremely well. I was at 35, I was independently wealthy outside of the business I had. And so it enabled me to make a choice where I said, I'm not going to run my business anymore. So I basically started a search for a CEO so that I would leave my business and I could spend all my time on that 80% like Buffett was spending. So the genesis of all that was that when I read the Buffett biography, there was an aha moment. And these aha moments can come to us in all kinds of different fields and areas. It can come in sports, it can come in whatever you have aptitude for. But the important thing is, I think that you've got to take the bull by the horns at that point. So you can't just say, "Oh, that's interesting," and kind of move on. You've got to really go for it at that point when you've got these aha moments. So basically, that's what I would recommend and suggest.
Do you have any books you recommend or anything to start understanding that stuff better?
Well, the one book which I'm sorry to say would be of more value than 4 years at UNO would be Poor Charlie's Almanac. You know, if you were to spend about $25 buying Poor Charlie's Almanac, it's slightly cheaper than the 4 years at UNO, with I think maybe more take-home value other than Professor Liu's class. And the back half of the book has about 11 talks that Charlie Munger has given over the years. Those are priceless. Those have thousands of years of human wisdom in them. And one of the talks, the 25 causes of human misjudgment, psychology of human misjudgment. I mean, I think I try to reread that talk every year. That talk really does a great job explaining how humans are wired. And it's a huge advantage in life if you understand, especially the wiring defects of humans. Our brains are not rational creations. Our brains are a result of a very messy, long history of evolution. And there's ancestral parts of our brain, and there's newer parts of the brain, and it's a mishmash of a lot of different things. And there's a lot of distortions from reality caused in our brains. And that's one of the reasons. So, for example, we see all these great investors who invested in Valiant, right? Why did that happen? Well, that's partly the result of this crazy wiring the brain has. It's not a, perfect rational creation. It's got weirdness. And so understanding that weirdness can be a big advantage.
So I have one last question. So you give killing some advice, for those 19 and 18 years old students, what can they do? So what other advice would you give them like at this stage of life, like in life in general, not just investment?
Yeah, one of the things Buffett talks about, he says that if we hang out with people better than us, we become better. If we hang out with people worse than us, we become worse. That should be pretty obvious when you think about it. Issue that we run into as humans is we have friendships. And sometimes we may have friends who aren't great humans. And they may even pull us down. One of the important things in life, which is difficult to do, is to be a harsh grader with your friends. So you have to increase interactions and friendships with the people who are better than you. And you have to let go some of the ones that aren't quite there. And, a lot of people are loyal, and this flies in the face of loyalty. So if your mental model is loyalty over all else, then you may be hurting yourself long term. So again, I think in life, what happens is that we have choices. And many times these choices require us to take what sometimes might be difficult or unpleasant actions. And those difficult and unpleasant actions may not be natural and may even be, one might say, inhumane or, cold-hearted, if you will. But I think that those are really important things to keep in mind. When I became friends with Charlie, I started to meet his friends. And when I met his friends, I was blown away. The quality level of these people was truly off the charts. And I know that what may have happened, which I didn't see in the decades before I met Charlie, was that he probably went through a pruning process where he increased interaction with some folks and decreased interaction with other folks. So one of the easy decisions I made was I tried to make friends with Charlie's friends. Now, a lot of them are old and some have passed away and so on. But that actually was extremely wonderful because these are these people were just so off the charts. And that same thing has been true in many ways when I come to Omaha. Every May when I come to Omaha, I've been coming to Omaha every May since 1997. So it's like more than a quarter century. And so many deep friendships have come out of Omaha. And when I look at the folks I met in Omaha, who are now part of my close friends, they're off the charts. So, for example, the average Berkshire Hathaway shareholder is an above average person. He or she is not the same as the general population. And that universe of people in Omaha is kind of self-selected and self-filtered to give you a certain kind of person. And in the case of Charlie's friends, that was an extreme version of that. So I think that being a harsh grader and being very deliberate about who your close friends are has a huge impact long term.